recording start. All right, recording has started. I'm going to start the stream, but don't say anything because they can hear you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the LemonBucket podcast. Thank you for joining us, all 1 to 2 of you. Today, we of course have my co-host, Mr. Brian Heater.
Hey, y'all.
And then today, as you can see from the wonderful title, we're going to be talking about the DNC and RNC, and then having a discussion about Chadwick Boseman. But first off, I guess let's jump into it. Brian, how was your week so far?
It's been good. It's been pretty hot here. I'm in San Diego. And it was hot for most of the week, but the last couple of days have cooled down a little bit. And unfortunately, it's supposed to get hot again over the weekend. But the next, at least until the end of the week, it's supposed to be nice and cool. So I have my fan constantly running because even though it's a little bit cooler, it's still kind of hot. So
Yeah.
I just got a new fan and it is just so nice. So
Nice.
that's yeah. So that's my week. It's been very exciting.
Cool.
New fan and new chair. Actually, there's a new chair. I can lean all the way back, and it's very comfortable. It's a Fortnite chair.
Perfect.
They
Wait,
did. They
is it
did not.
actually?
It actually is. I
Oh,
don't even. I don't even play Fortnite, but it just the colors. It looks nice with
purple black.
my room. You can't see, but the front of my wall is actually purple. So this is kind of like a
Ah,
lightish pink, and yeah, the front of the wall is purple, so it looks very nice.
got it.
Compliments. I'm all about matching colors here.
Yeah, I mean it's very important. As you can see, I've got so
You
many matching colors.
you have a nice ambiance there, though. Your light is,
Thank you. It
yeah,
was it
looks
was
nice.
it's two
Really
whole
sets the
lights.
mood.
It does. I think the streaming mood is very important. Okay, so did you check out the RNC and DNC for the last 2 weeks?
I did. I watched most of both of them.
Okay.
Full caveat, I did not watch the entire thing because who's got time for that except for, I guess,
It's
political
fucking
analysts.
4 days long. Like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have the time.
Yeah, so I watched a lot of it, a lot of thoughts about both. There's it's just interesting because, traditionally I feel like they would not have been as produced as they were, as both the DNC and the RNC were incredibly produced, and incredibly well produced. Everything was very polished, everything was shot ahead of time, had like nice backgrounds and like really poignant like I guess what they were trying to get after was obvious. You know, it didn't never feel like thrown together, which
Mm-hmm.
I feel like traditionally it kind of does feel a little thrown together in
Mm-hmm.
like a convention, more than a like a produced television thing. This was a television event. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
I
instead of like
keep
a stage
shaking
event.
my
Yeah.
camera because
Yeah,
I'm
it
up
felt
on
it
the desk.
completely. It
Not
felt it
Wix. It's
completely
me bumping
different
my desk.
than normally does. And it was it was just so fucking wild. Just the craziness with like the false starts of people being, oh wait, we're not ready yet? Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now, and then like cut back to it again. Did you see that one photo of the guy who was cutting the DNC? Um,
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that was on Reddit. Yeah, you should pull that up.
yeah, I'm looking for it.
He's got like 10 monitors or something like that. It's insane. He's doing the whole DNC from his home, I guess, um, or his studio. But props props to him. I wonder if he was working the RNC too.
I don't know.
Um, d- this is maybe a side note. Did you feel like there were specific sections of in both the DNC and RNC that were meant to cater to specific populations? Like there was like the DNC had a whole section that had a lot of Latin music. Like Stand By, there was a Stand By Me rendition of a Latin art from a Latin artist,
Mm-hmm.
and then they had people from, I don't remember where they were from. Unfortunately, I cannot recall. We might be able to pull it up, but they were most definitely of Latin descent, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was very poignant in these sections. And then the RNC did a similar thing, um, trying to win the black vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of is interesting where I don't know necessarily that I identified those sections as being so obvious before in
Mm-hmm.
previous years, you know, where that's what they're trying to do essentially. Uh, but
Yeah,
it's
I think
super
there's a
obvious when they stack like a Latin like artist music, you know, like Latin music, like a music video thing. That was like very good. It was very well done. You know, I can't speak highly enough about how well produced everything was. Like they did a really good job. That's not my issues with it. I guess just like it loses its authenticity when everything is so prepared.
pre-recorded. But I mean, really though, like it was never authentic to begin with. Even from like last, like even like when it's on the stage and normal and everything, it's still
For sure.
completely fake.
But at least there's an air of liveness and you feel like it's a convention. People are prepared. People have prepared, right? But it's a convention and they've prepared for the convention, and yeah, it's like a fake thing, but it's a little bit different. It's a live convention. This
Mm-hmm.
is not a live this is they're trying to do a live convention. They converted it into a like totally different thing.
Yeah.
Uh with the like very specific messages.
Yeah.
And I'm just not sure that the messages were that specific in the
Oh
past. And
no, they're both
I wonder,
very
yeah,
vague and very like ethereal. Which I mean, of course, they always are. Like these aren't people who are campaigning on like actual plans or like actual like projects or legislation that they're looking to pass through or whatever. They have got no real agenda outside of just
yeah,
stay in or get power. So,
right.
I mean, it makes sense that they would just be like an ethereal, random, whatever. Um, I feel, however, even though there was parts of it that definitely like tried to speak to different like minority groups, I think
Hmm.
that for both of them, they were kind of going after the same exact stat person like kind of voter, which would be like the middle of the road middle class suburbanite, right? Republican, like moderate Republican leaning suburbanites. So like you had like the DNC pulling in a ton of people, Republicans. So you had like John Kasich, you had Meg Whitman, you had the other Meg, I don't remember her name, crap. And then you had Colin Powell and everything being like guest speakers and getting more speaking time than even somebody like AOC, who only got like what was it, 30 or 60 seconds? Granted, that was
Yeah.
60 seconds as given to her by Bernie. But it's clear that the DNC wants nothing to do with like the left or progressive wing of the party and was going full bore into the like middle class suburbanite like voter. And it's clear also that the RNC was doing the same thing, like posing about all the
Right.
fear of like the urban people coming in, the fear of like, I mean, we'll get into this maybe a little bit later, of like multi-family housing units being built in like well-to-do suburbs, and that being like the great like destroyer of society. um, and so it's clear that both of them were going for the same exact demographic of that sort of like middle class suburbanite.
I think that it makes sense because in general, the people that are watching the DNC and the RNC are going to be that. They're going to be that age. They're going to be that demographic. Like putting AOC, like most people that aren't progressive don't get excited about or maybe even know who AOC is, right?
Oh no, most people know who AOC is. AOC is like one of
People
the
that aren't
most.
politically involved though, like if
Yeah,
you're a person that is just checking it out and checking out the DNC and like you're going to vote for Joe Biden and
if
that's
you're already
just
going to vote
because
for
you
Joe
hate
Biden,
Donald
maybe
Trump.
not. But like I know Republicans hate AOC. Like they've turned her into one of their big boogeymen. Um,
Oh, right. But I was talking about the DNC.
DNC.
But yes.
But
But
I could see a
yes.
lot of people, even in the middle, like middle suburbanites, like still getting the same sort of messaging from both like the young progressive wing of the party and the Republican wing uh, of like Congress and whatnot, pushing that different ideas. Because she's like one of the most well known congresswomen there are, even though this is like her
Yeah.
first term. So
I
I would
I
argue
support
that
her
she's more well
actually.
known than Meg Whitman is. Do you know who
Yeah.
Meg Whitman is?
I know of her. If you ask me like what she does, I don't know. I'm guessing she is a congresswoman.
Hmm.
That's just a guess. Incorrect. All right. There we go.
Nope.
I shouldn't have
See,
said anything.
and
It
Meg
shows my
Whitman
ignorance.
got more time speaking time than AOC or whatever. But
Who is she?
she was the CEO of eBay. She ran for Congress, for governor
That's
in
okay. Okay.
California,
Okay.
and
Right.
now, she is such a
When did
great
she run
businesswoman. You're
in
close,
California?
huh? When did she run?
When did she run in
Uh,
California?
I met her when she was running for Congress when I was up in Sacramento, and that would have been back in 2012, 2011, sometime around there. It's when Jerry Brown won.
Hmm.
After
Oh, okay.
after Schwarzenegger, and then before Brown. She ran against Brown.
I was living in Oregon at the time, so
Ah,
I would not have voted
that makes
uh
sense.
in that election. Yeah.
Wait, so then your first like congressional election would have been for Newsom, wouldn't it?
For California,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yes, I
um,
voted for Newsom
yeah.
because he was talking about. I was very excited about the all the talk during that time was the electric was this hyperspeed rail, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one that's supposed to go from Los Angeles all the way up to San
SFA,
Francisco.
the one
Yeah,
that's never getting built.
that's not that now is not yeah never
It,
getting built.
yeah.
And he like ran on I mean partly on uh getting that built, saying that he's
Yeah.
going to build that.
Which,
Unfortunately,
you
that
know,
was one of the reasons I voted for him.
who
But
knows? Maybe because all this COVID stuff, we might not even actually need it. You know, maybe like one of the big things would be good for is like commuters and stuff who need to go north south frequently. But if you're working from home now and you can go live out in the valley, maybe you don't even need to like commute between SF and LA. But yeah, I don't know.
it's still nice to have. I think it's a nice option
I mean, it
for.
would be nice just to have
I just
something other
I just
than
hate
planes
that
between
people
us.
have like basically monopolies. You know, Amtrak has basically a monopoly on like the
Train travel.
trains, like how people travel on the ground, right? Like,
Yeah,
why can't we get a high speed rail built?
because we
It's
suck
because
as a
there's
country.
so many interests that don't want that to happen because so many people will lose money if that happens, and
Yep.
everybody, the way the way that they portray it is, oh, it's too expensive. That's what they always say. It's too expensive. It's going to cost too much money. But that's not the real reason
Yeah.
that these, like, corporations are spending a bunch of money to, like, make sure that it doesn't happen. Why would they spend money if it's going to be too much money? Oh, we really want to make sure that the nation's, like, spends their money wisely. No, it's because they're going to lose money if it does happen, and they've calculated how much that is. And so they're like, we can spend this much on this because this is how much we'll lose if it gets put in. They
Yeah.
literally have people that are figuring that shit out. It's insane.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's the entire like point of like
and then
lobbyists
they,
and stuff.
yeah, and then they feed that shit into the think tanks, and bada bing, that's how you get. And then the talk shows repeat that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the people that are listening to the right wing talk shows, they hear that stuff and they hear, oh yeah, it's going to be so expensive to build that. It's a waste of money. Why do we need that? Damn Californians. That's literally their thought process. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's big generalization, obviously, and I can't, but
But
just
you're not
like,
wrong.
but yeah, if you're listening and you are opposed to this wall because you think that it's going to be too expensive, think about where that opinion, like, came from. And also remember that there are a lot of corporations, and people, we'll just say people, that are spending a lot of money to make sure that it doesn't happen. And why would people be doing that if it wasn't going to be, like, good for us,
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
and bad for them?
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
All right. So I guess let's
sidetrack.
yeah back on track. Get the train back on track. Let's talk a little bit about what you thought of each party's conference like platform. Like, what did you think of like the speeches and like what did you think that each party is really going for and what do you think about that?
Um, I think that the DNC, it's really seemed like they were trying uh, to be the party. I mean, they have pretty much had the same consistent message throughout the last 4 years, which is that we are the party that is opposed to Trump. We think that the things that he is doing is, he's morally corrupt, and the things he's doing are bad, and, things like that. This is like the gist that I got from him. I doesn't really feel like, there are a lot of different examples of the things that why President Trump is bad and why he's bad for the country and whatnot. And I know that I'm not being very specific, but that was the general gist of it. Uh, expert analysis by
Appropriate
political
expert
analyst
analysis.
Brian Heater. The Dems don't like Trump.
Shocking.
That's the
What?
gist.
Yeah, I felt like that was
Um,
like really the biggest thing is I feel like it's just the Dems trying to say
And
that Trump, it's like, I don't want to say Trump derangement syndrome, but like, no, there's no idea of like policies that would actually fix these problems, and things that can actually solve like like everything is Trump's fault, which a lot of it is, but a lot of these things are like larger systemic issues, and like I saw nothing from the DNC that would like give me any confidence that they're going to try anything to solve these systemic issues, right?
yeah, here's the thing: is like there wasn't that much talk about like new policies that are being brought in. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember that much. It was a very much like kind of pointing fingers at the other side. I liked what Bernie said.
Yeah,
Is the most
Can we listen to what he said?
important in the modern history
sorry, a second.
of this country. In response to the unprecedented crises we face, we need an unprecedented response, a movement like never before of people who are prepared to stand up and fight for democracy and decency and against greed, oligarchy, and bigotry. And we need Joe Biden as our next president.
So in late May,
I love that he throws that in after. And
Right.
we need Joe Biden as like he said that all that first part, and then he said the last thing as if it was an aside.
Yeah. And like,
I'm sorry, but I noticed that when I was watching that, I was like, that was the first thing I noticed is like, huh, that seems like there was a big like comma or ellipse or something right there, you know. But anyways, go on. I'm sorry, I
yeah,
interrupted.
yeah, no, and I think Bernie was one of the few people who actually talked about like actual like policies and things that might actually like change stuff. And my concern, I guess, from the DNC is seeing that like it's clear that they've learned no lessons from the Trump
2016.
2016, but more importantly, they've learned no lessons from the Obama administration, right? Like Obama came in and promised a lot of like systemic fixes for a lot of problems. He came in being way more progressive than he actually like governed as a president. And
Right.
like there's like now there's like no interest in like having any of those policy fixes even remotely be discussed. And so like after Obama presidency came in and did nothing to solve these issues, like it was so bad that like the pendulum swung so much that we got, a proto-fascist like Trump into office. And I don't see them learning any of those same lessons. And I picture a Biden administration that's going to be more right wing and less interested in fixing any of the actual problems that we have in this country, like dealing with stuff like increases in
Yeah.
like housing costs, dealing with stuff like decreases in like real lived wages, like the actual like principle of price parity, like people can't buy as
Right.
much stuff. It's getting harder and harder for individuals to even get health care and everything. And like right now the Dems are looking at like the biggest pandemic we've ever seen, and the only thing they can think of is just expand the Cobra. And like, if
Yeah.
you don't have any money because you lost your job, you're not going to be able to afford Cobra. Like, like Cobra was really like that, and the open markets are really the only things that Obama got passed in this 4 years. And these are things that were put forth by the Heritage Foundation that were right wing plans to begin with. They were already Republican plans. And like
Right.
from Biden, I see no interest in solving any of these issues. And what I fear is that in 4 more years, there's an argument to be made that maybe finally Democrats will see that after Biden doesn't solve any of these problems, they may finally learn the lesson, and voters will finally get in Bernie Sanders like candidate, call it a Warren, call it a AOC, call it a Tina Nina Turner or whatever. But I just don't have any faith in it, and I'm a
I would
little
take
afraid that like
Stacey
after that,
Abrams.
Stacey Abrams, I'm a little hit and miss on her, but she would be way better than anyone we've had before. And I just
I would
picture
prefer. I'm just being honest. I would prefer Stacey Abrams over Kamala Harris as a VP. I know that she
easily.
doesn't have as much of like name recognition, but I just don't really trust Kamala Harris that much, and it's because of her history of being a DA in
Yeah.
California that is a little concerning.
I would agree with you. I'm actually torn on Harris because she's completely a political sycophant, right? She will do what will get her the votes, and she will do what is like most politically advantageous. She doesn't have any like
100%.
actual
Yeah.
ideals. She doesn't have any like actual policies, and this is clear from her DA time. Is that she just did what she thought like suburban voters would vote for her in on, which was like a tough on crime policy and anti-marijuana policy, which even to be fair at the time, those like popular votes would have those things legalized. But as far as like getting power within the party and everything, especially as a black woman, like I think she felt like she had to do these harsher criminal things. And then her flip flopping on Medicare for all when it
That's an
changes,
interesting perspective, and I did not think about it that way.
and so like when it changes, like flip flopping from Medicare for all also tells me that she has no ideals, she has no policy ideas. She's just a political sycophant, and that means there's one of two things that can happen. With a political sycophant, we on the left can use that to our advantage if we know that she's going to bend on it. Biden isn't going to bend on a Medicare for all kind of thing, right? Biden's already said even if Congress passes that he's going to veto it, which is fucking crazy. But Kamala, on the other hand, if Kamala sees the political winds change and we can make that change happen in our own communities, like that will add up to a point where she will flip on it, right? She will
Yeah,
just do what's most politically advantageous.
that's a great
Similar
point.
to Obama in some regards too, when it comes to like gay marriage. He was against gay marriage up until 2012, until finally like the political winds changed and it was clear like gay marriage is just so politically advantageous that you have to support it. Where somebody like a Joe Biden might not support a gay marriage agenda if even if it's politically advantageous, right? Where Kamala, I think we might have an opportunity to pull her in certain regards. In regards to like Medicare for all, it's clear that she can be pulled because she has already. Like she's gone to Medicare for all and then got off of it. We can probably get her back on it at some point if we can just make it politically advantageous. Same for like Green New Deal. If we can make it politically advantageous, we can probably pull Kamala over, and then maybe she can try and convince a Biden that this is what he needs to do. Because let's be honest, he's a doddering old man who's basically senile. So, my hope maybe that'll
You
happen.
don't think that they're injecting them with brain steroids, and you're crazy, dude. They got them on every friggin'
Yeah.
thing that you could do anti Alzheimer's,
They're
like
hopping him up on grandpa juice, no
yeah,
doubt.
HGH up the up the yin yang,
Yeah.
just like I'm sure. I don't really know about that stuff. So what I said I don't even know if
Yeah.
that's how that works.
I don't know either. I'm not a scientist. But yeah, so but the where the DNC put its eggs in its basket, especially with the Republicans, does give me some concern that they are moving right, especially when it comes to like, what's happening with like the Lincoln Project.
Yeah. Yep.
So that stuff actually really concerns me. I'm glad Republicans are like shitting on Trump and everything because he's a proto-fascist and I don't like him. But like I'm really concerned that they're not just doing that because they don't like Trump. I'm really concerned that they're doing that because they want to bring the Democratic Party further right. I mean, like joining in the Democratic Party and just moving it to a further right party. So you have a center right party and then a far right party and nothing to the left.
Yeah.
And so that does concern me. And it's clear that like the DNC, they're buying it. They're going for it, bringing on board 5 Republicans to be their speakers, having no real policy in any of their DNC stuff, talking about how they're not going to push Medicare for all, talking about how they're not going to push any progressive policies, period. Like, I don't know, man. That bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah, there not a lot of exciting things. Not a lot of things to be excited about. We've talked a lot about the DNC. We're supposed to be talking a little bit about the RNC
Yeah,
too.
I was gonna pivot off to the RNC right after your closing thoughts. Do you have any closing thoughts? And I've got one more after. Actually, let me pop in with one more thought, and then I'll leave you with closing thoughts on DNC, and
Yeah,
then we'll move to
go for it.
RNC. So when you talk about like people like us, the DNC not giving us anything to be excited about, and nothing that we can like move forward on, I agree with that. But I actually think of this as these things actually being of substantial harm for us, specifically us in our generation, right?
Right.
So like if you look at the like mobility of our generation and the economic outcomes of our generation, it's bleak as fuck. Like like we just got hit with the second greatest like recession in the history of our country, and like within 10 years, and our generation just got hit with it
Really,
again.
the whole world, if you
Yeah,
think about it.
and we don't have the same kind of prospects that the generations before us had. And so like there's already an active harm in our ability to buy housing now. There's an active harm in our ability to pay for health insurance. There's an active harm in our ability to save for retirement. All these things will continue to compound because the system as it stands right now is functionally um, is dysfunctional and does not work for
Right.
us. It functionally works
Yeah.
against us. And so it's not just that like they're not giving us something to be excited about. The status quo is an active harm to our generation, right? The status quo is actively taking from our generation. And additionally, on top of that, when we go into like issues around like, race and justice and racial inequalities, that gets compounded 10 times over. So your
Right.
friends and my friends of color are dealing with the same issues we are, but 10
Ten,
times as
10
worse.
times worse. Yeah.
Exactly. And these things compound over time and over time and over time. And if you think the discivility that's happening right now in a lot of these protests are bad, give it 10 more years of this and see what happens. It's going to be worse. And on
It was
top of
very
that,
uh
go ahead.
that made me think. Sorry to interrupt, but that
Nope.
made me think of something I saw. Joe Biden. It was like an ad where he was essentially condemning riots and looting. Rioting and looting, saying that you're not a part of the, you're not American uh, if you do that. And I just
When
thought,
even I find it funny that even within like one of the first big myths of our civilization is the Boston Tea Party. Like it was a riot and looting and property destruction. That's like
literally,
it's built within our framework to do that. And like once it's done by people of color, no, it can't have it. Like
it doesn't
it's
make any
preposterous.
sense. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand. The thing is, the ad, like, he could have said, something like, I don't know, like, there's a way to not overtly say, first of all, he shouldn't be condemning rioting and looting at all. I don't think, because it's
He,
like a
but
form of speech.
he's
I
got to
believe
go for that. I mean, I would disagree
he's
that I think
really
it's a
fighting
form
for
of
that
speech,
moderate.
but he's going for that. He's going for that like middle class white suburban voter,
I would say that,
who's afraid of these riots coming into their little
yeah,
peaceful neighborhoods.
but they're like, okay, speech is maybe a stretch, but it's like a result of what we were just talking about. This,
It's clearly just a result.
the
I'm not going to say it's free
generations of
speech because it's a little, but yeah, it is just a
systemic
result of what it is. Yeah.
racism and whatnot. So, but like for him to say that people are like un-American for doing that, and then in the middle of that, it's like he doesn't really oppose himself to Trump that much. It's like, we got to beat these Republicans or something. I forget what it is. Maybe we can pull it up. The TYT did a really good little blurb on it. But
you keep talking.
anyways, I just thought it, he's not really doing a lot to win over the black vote if he's condemning, like the rioting that people are doing. Like, I don't understand that. Like,
I mean, I can tell you what's happening completely. He doesn't respect the black voters. He doesn't think he needs to do anything to get them. Because if you're
he
thinking about
overtly, like,
if
he said, this is from the RNC, by the way. The RNC said, that you're not black if you vote
if you're thinking about voting for
yeah,
Trump, or
yes,
like which is
exactly.
basically like if you're not going to vote Democrat, you're not a real black person, which means that he doesn't think that like he has to try and get your vote as a person of color, which is
It is so insane
fucking
for
ridiculous.
somebody to say that, like, as like a divisive statement. Like, first of all, I hate the divisiveness
That was
of,
that,
like,
that was the podcast with Charlemagne the God, right? If I remember correctly, when he said that.
Yeah, it might have been.
Just for anyone at home who wants to find it, it was his interview with Charlemagne the God.
I think that you're correct. That was a good interview. Anyways,
Yeah.
my point, he's not really doing that much to win over, the voters that he needs to do. This is kind of the same thing that Hillary Clinton was doing. She needed to win certain states, and she did not really. She didn't take care of it.
Nope.
She got complacent. He's getting complacent.
Mm-hmm.
They're both they both kind of are making, or he's making the same mistakes, I think, that she did personally.
Oh,
I'm not an
I would agree.
expert, but
I think she
I
had a
believe.
harder uphill climb to take because the Republicans have been using her as a like
Oh yeah, they've been setting it up for years
for
for
decades
this moment when
for
she
Hillary
was gonna
Clinton.
be,
Yeah,
when
and
she
he
was
doesn't
possibly
quite
gonna be president, and
and
they knocked it out of the park, unfortunately.
and with Joe Biden, obviously, like I don't think he's got that same sort of like the Republicans haven't been demonizing him for like 3 decades, right? So he doesn't have the same uphill climb as she did, but he's not doing much more than she was at the time, which gives me pause.
Makes me pretty worried for AOC, because
Yeah.
they're doing now what they did to Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna do the same thing, where by the end of, like, by in a couple, 10 years, or whenever, I think that she would be a good presidential candidate.
Possibly, yeah.
Seeing
Or
possibly, in
or
the
maybe we
future.
just don't run the AOC. We run another progressive who they haven't demonized for 2 decades, and AOC gets to be a pretty strong cabinet member. I'm
It
fine with
just
that.
is so unfortunate that that's what happens, though. It's like
And this is politics.
that is literally. And maybe I'm seeing it from a, with a horse blinder on, but
All right, so we gotta keep
it's
this
just
thing
hard.
moving.
We got to talk a little bit about the RNC.
No, we're gonna do another like 10, 15 minutes on the RNC. So RNC time. Let's go over what your first initial thoughts of the RNC were. What did you think about their messaging? Where do you think they were going with it? How do you think they were approaching these things? Give us some of your thoughts.
So for the most part, you know, to me as a Democrat, I perceived a lot of these, the
Wait,
things they would say
are you
as,
Democrat?
well, not really. I'm actually registered as a Democrat, but that is only so I can vote in the primaries, which I do not believe.
You can, because I'm not a Democrat, and I vote in the primaries.
So how do you pull it off then?
If you're an independent in California, they ask if you have a preference for which party you want to vote for in the primaries, and they just give it to you.
Oh, really?
Yep. In California,
then you're
you can vote for you
okay.
can vote in any if you're
If you're an independent, though, yeah. So
specifically a non-party affiliated person,
not
there is an independent party
not the
in California.
independent party.
It
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fucking confusing. But if
So
you're non-affiliated, yeah,
unaffiliated is the correct term. Maybe
yep.
I might switch to that.
Or it's I think it's
For
technically in
the next
California it's called
election.
no party preference. As far as what you're registered as is no party preference, but then you get to choose
How
any
long has that
primary you want
been
to go.
going on?
Oh, I mean, every
Forever.
time I voted,
Yeah.
I've never been affiliated with
You've
a
never
party in
been
my life.
a Dem, but you voted in. Okay, that's
But
interesting.
I've always been able to vote in primaries. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to
So
know. For anybody that doesn't know
at
that,
least the past like
I didn't know that.
12
So
years, so probably before that. I was actually thinking a lot before that because I remember my mom was an independent as well, and she would vote in Republican primaries all the time. Um, yeah, spoiler alert, we came from the rural areas of California. Everyone around me is Republican.
so
RNC, go.
so what I perceived a lot of what people were saying as incredulous statements. It's because the Republicans were trying to do the exact same thing to the Democrats that the Democrats were trying to do to Trump, basically, and the Republican Party, and only the Republicans use the RNC really used a lot of like fear mongering and stuff like that, like really aggressively, like more so it seems to me than the than the DNC. I mean, the thing is that Donald Trump, in my opinion, makes his case for himself. It like makes it easy to like be like, yo, like look at the things that this dude has done. It's very obvious. RNC, the RNC really like kind of has to go after and use language that is like TV language, like news, TV, political. You know what I mean? Like the way that they say stuff, they like just generalize a lot of things. Like I would love to see the video of I think it's Donnie Trump or Eric Trump. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's Donnie Trump Jr.'s
Junior.
his now like girlfriend or wife or something, and it was
Oh,
actually Gavin
I'm
Newsom's
way ahead of
ex.
you on that one. Okay, so
Gavin
let's just do that
Newsom's
right now
ex.
because oh my god, this was like the most like fucking coked up like speech I've. Now I'll show you. We'll just do the highlights, but it was so fucking insane.
America. It's all
Just
on the
right
line.
off the bat, dude.
President Trump believes in you. He emancipates and lifts you up to live your American dream. You are capable. You are qualified. You are powerful, and you have the ability to
Just keep
choose
yelling.
your
Just
life
keep yelling at the camera.
and determine
Whatever you do,
your
keep fucking
destiny.
yelling.
Don't let the Democrats take
I
you for
want to know what
granted.
fucking go-go
Don't
juice
let them
she
step
has.
on you.
Fucking,
Don't let them destroy your
Kimberly
families, your
Guilfoyle.
lives, and your
I love
future.
her. I love her. The fact that her name
Don't
is
let them
Guilfoyle.
kill future generations
Pause it real
because
quick.
they
Pause it
told
real
you and
quick.
brainwash you.
Don't let them destroy your families, your lives, and your future. Is that
Yeah.
what she said?
Yep.
Like, that's what I'm talking about. They use such huge like, maybe
Bump.
I'm biased. Maybe I'm biased, but that's such a general statement. How is he destroying your family, lives, and future? Like, that's not defined.
And
It's just like they
doesn't
are.
have to be.
Believe me.
It's a Mad Lib. It's fill in the blank here. If what do you think is destroying your family life? Fill in blank. And again, like most people would like none of the Republican like granted none of the Democrat like policies solve this either, but none of the like Republican policies help like family first like ideas, like the fact that we've built an economic system where both parents have to go and slave away their time instead of spending time with their kids and raising the next generation. The simple fact that like people are so economically strapped that we don't feel like we can have families and like having a kid and giving birth to a kid is such a medical and economic burden on us that abortion just seems easier. Like if you wanted to solve these issues, you wouldn't be doing it with their policies. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You just fill in
Yeah.
the blank here. Like what are you afraid of, and what do you think the problem is? Fill in blank here.
Yeah.
They're destroying family values. Fill in blank here.
That's a really interesting point too, is that
And fed you lies that you
Sorry.
when you look at fed you lies, when you look at like the supposed ideals of what the Republican Party is supposed to stand for, which is like the family ideas, right? Family
Mhm.
first, God and country, things like this.
Family,
it doesn't
God,
really
country, and fucking money.
it really is only like, it seems like it's only money, and it's like the other stuff kind of falls in line afterwards, as for face value, everything. And that's something that I wanted to say about the Dems too, and Joe Biden, is that both, they the way that things get dealt with now, it doesn't ever nothing systemic gets dealt with, because everything that gets dealt with is face value. Everything that is at
Mhm.
face value, like the shootings, right? The mass shootings and stuff like that. That is very much dealt with at face value as it comes. Oh, the president says a speech, and then we kind of like go on. Oh, the president says another speech. Oh, we
Mhm.
really need legislation, and people make these grand shows, and it's like nothing really has been done, right?
And
I
yeah,
mean,
nothing gets solved.
like, there still is mass shootings all the time.
Mhm.
Less now because of
Every day.
COVID, I guess. You know, but like, it still happens all the time, and we don't do legislation to deal with that, right? We don't put legislation to like you just said. We don't have legislation to help the family, really. Like,
Mhm.
there's one part in the RNC where they talk about how they're going to build affordable housing, or they call it something else. They don't call it affordable housing. They call it cheap housing units or something like that.
Yeah.
They make it sound bad. It's like, affordable housing is so people can afford to live, and it's not even
Yeah.
affordable.
And
You
like
know,
like
in San
everyone's
Francisco,
having.
affordable housing is not affordable unless you
Oh,
get
trust me,
a
I know.
lottery.
I know.
You know,
And like there's nobody cares, and there's no expectation that things are going to get better. That's it. Fuck you.
if you,
Things aren't going
yeah,
to get better. Fuck you. I mean,
if
that's what I hear from both parties, to be honest. And I don't want to be a nihilist, because like we got to keep the fight going, because what else are we gonna do? But yeah, I think you're right. There's no solutions offered, and
yeah,
if you
neither
wanted,
party,
like, if you
neither
wanted
party
people to
really.
be economically like like, if you want people to be economically independent, and you don't want them relying on the government, then yeah, fucking affordable housing would be one of the best things that you could do to do that. Have people build in housing that people can afford, and then you can give people the ability to be economically independent from the government.
Yes,
Like, this
yes,
is not goddamn difficult, but they don't care, because it's all about just the money. It's about
yep,
creating, well, I don't want to get too Marxist here, but like, it's about creating a class that you can pseudo enslave with a carrot and a stick, and you can give them so little wages that you can profit off of them, and you can make the downfalls of not working with that system so great, i.e., like, if you don't keep working your day job of minimum wage, you're going to be out of your house, and you are going to be completely destroyed. And you just keep that guillotine hanging over everyone's head, and a lot of money from that. So, but let's go ahead and continue watching the
wow,
wonderful Guilfoyle's cocaine-addled speech.
you weren't good enough. Like my parents, you can achieve your American dream. You can be that shining example to the world. Manifest and be the change in this country that you dream, that you hope, that you believe in. Stand for an American president who is fearless, who believes in you, and who loves this country and will fight for her. President Trump is the leader who will rebuild the promise of America and ensure that every citizen can
side shot?
realize
Why?
their American dream. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders and fighters for freedom and liberty and the American dream, the best is yet to come.
They just needed for her. I want somebody to recut. I'm sure somebody has recut it, but they just needed to hold that a little bit longer, and it would have been so hilarious. The
How
best
much-
is yet to come.
How much cocaine do you think she was on when she made this speech? Oh, God.
I can't even fathom it, dude.
And here's getting into like understanding fascism is a pretty good thing to do. And Umberto Eco has got a pretty good description of fascism. Now it's really big and long. It's 14 points because it's like really like nebulous. But one of the things that he points out is that like so much of it has to do with these grander ideas of like ultra nationalism, and like you find these nebulous, and a through line for most of them is you find this nebulous thing that you can attach to, and you just hit that over and over and over again. Whether it's about like your military needs to be the strongest in the world, your enemies are both weak and strong at the same time. You have both a great and glorious past that you have to get back to, and you have a great and glorious future that you need to get to, but right now you're weakened by this other enemy. And like there's all these things that feel really nebulous and really like just like feelings, and you just hit that over and over and over and over and over again. And this is a clear a clear stipulation that even though I've seen this kind of thing during like readings of the Bush administration and of like the Reagan administration before, like this time it feels different. It feels at such a fever pitch that it feels like we are like, again, I don't want to be doom and gloom here, but it feels like we're like 3 to 5 steps away from just the Third Reich. Like this speech would go really well right next to one of Hitler's speeches pounding the table, talking about how how Germany needs like breathing room and feeding room, and that we need to like get back to the family and start like getting rid of these like Juden, like, you know, people destroying our country, because the best of Germany is yet to come. Like it feels like it would be perfectly powered right next to each other. And I'm a little worried that like the Republican Party has always been a little bit, has like minor fascistic tendencies, but right now it feels like you are on the cliff's edge of just falling into pure fascism.
And I think that a lot of that feeling stems from the fact that they're so disconnected from reality, and like just lying through their teeth. I'm not talking about policies, you know, I'm talking about, think about how many Republicans were so like abhorrent, what am I trying to say? Abhorrently opposed to Trump.
Yeah.
Like when he was running. Think about that. Like almost anyone, anyone that you would talk to that was a Republican would pretty much not be a fan of him.
And
now, right? You can't find a single person. Basically, there's like 5, right? The 5 Republicans that were a part of the DNC, right? It's like it's a total flip flop, and we were all there, right? We all saw that people were saying, no, you know, don't vote for Donald Trump. He's going to tear the party apart. And then he got all these votes, you know, and some people did go over to him kind of late, right? When it looked like he was gonna, can you still see me? You're good.
Yeah, I can see you.
My cat jumped on my desk and I had the Windows disconnect sound. So.
Oh, no, you're good. Wait, I'm guessing Mia, because Congo's in the background.
Yeah. So you know, it's that kind of feeling of like, what do you mean we were supporting him the whole time? Like, really? you were? Because I don't seem to remember that.
No, it's just about power going to where power always needs to go.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Guilfoyle is just a fun speech because it's just goddamn fucking insane. I want to go to this McCloskey speech, and I'm also probably going to go use the restroom real fast while this plays. But I want to come back to this because this one really clicks for me about what the Republicans are going after as far as like the fear mongering and the building of a culture war that's been bubbling under the surface for a while, but I think it's now getting to a fever pitch into a point where it could actually turn into like an actual war. And that's one thing I'm actually really worried about, especially with the going-ons of what happened this past week with the Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin and the shooting in Portland. And so like pick up on what kind of like culture war stuff that the McCloskeys are diving into here, and then we can have a discussion afterwards. Does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm playing.
We're speaking to you tonight from St. Louis, Missouri, where just weeks ago you may have seen us defending our home as a mob of protesters descended on our neighborhood.
America is such a great country that not only do you have the right to own a gun and use it to defend yourself, but thousands of Americans will offer you free advice on how to use it. At least that's what we experienced. What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods around our country. And that's what we want to speak to you about tonight.
That's exactly right. Whether it's the defunding of police, ending cash bail so criminals can be released back out on the streets the same day to riot again, or encouraging anarchy and chaos on our streets. It seems as if the Democrats no longer view the government's job as protecting honest citizens from criminals, but rather protecting criminals from honest citizens. Not a single person in the out-of-control mob you saw at our house was charged with a crime. But you know who was? We were. They've actually charged us with felonies for daring to defend our home. On top of that, consider this. The Marxist liberal activist leading the mob to our neighborhood stood outside our home with a bullhorn screaming, "You can't stop the revolution." Just weeks later, that same Marxist activist won the Democrat nomination to hold a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. In the city of St. Louis, that's the same as winning the general election. That Marxist revolutionary is now going to be the Congresswoman from the 1st District of Missouri. These radicals are not content with marching in the streets. They want to walk the halls of Congress. They want to take over. They want power. This is Joe Biden's party. These are the people who will be in charge of your future and the future of your children.
They're not satisfied with spreading the chaos and violence into our communities. They want to abolish the suburbs altogether by ending single-family home zoning. This forced rezoning would bring crime, lawlessness, and low-quality apartments into now thriving suburban neighborhoods. President Trump smartly ended this government overreach,
poverty, and
but Joe Biden wants to bring it back.
Housing to our apartments. Like
these are the policies that are coming to a neighborhood near you. So make no mistake, no matter where you live, your family will not be safe in the radical Democrats' America.
Right.
Low-income housing, i.e. the rest of us.
Right, and like it's just so. I don't know. It's the lines between us and them are becoming so stark there, and like it's clear that they're going for like, you wealthy people in the middle class don't want poor people coming and living next to you. And granted, this is also coded with like urban poor people, which is also coded with like black people and people of color. Like it's all wrapped in there. And,
I mean, he very, very obviously pointed to, the person that was leading the rioters, as we call her. Bob, or whatever.
No,
he
fucking
said,
Michaela. Was it Michaela? She won her Congress district. Like, she's a very impressive young woman, and she won her Congress district, which is
And
great.
he's like, she's a Marxist, like she's gonna be leading your children and blah. And it's like, come on, dude. And they don't say anything that is overtly racist, but he is very much like that. Those are two racist motherfuckers. I'm sorry. Like they don't want
most definitely.
black people to come live next to them. You know, they're mad because a bunch of black people are coming and mobbing at their house. Like,
And you know what? They'd probably be fine with a few black people living next to them if they were wealthy and rich. Like,
yeah,
if they're
he just
nice,
doesn't like
good
poor
suburban
people,
Yep.
especially poor black people. You know, it's like, come on, you know, and we're supposed to respect them.
Yeah.
You know, they
Um.
they take out like AK-47s to fucking defend their nice ass house.
Technically, it's an M16 and I want to say like a
All right,
like a
M16.
9mm like pea
I'm
shooter.
showing my naivety.
But he came out trying to look like fucking Scarface.
It was so dumb.
Say hello to my little friend.
Those people.
And like,
the low income housing thing was
that's
like,
the one that got me. The low income housing.
Low income housing, that's what they call it. Like that's a bad thing. Like
Yeah.
that's a bad thing.
Poor people are bad, and at some point we need to exterminate them, Brian. At some point they need to go away. And that's essentially what they're trying to get to at the end of the day. Is like, you can't trust these poor people. You can't trust these people of color. You don't want to be living next to them. Let's segregate all of these, us and them. And like, before the messaging on this stuff was there, it was just couched in a lot of like innuendo, right? It was a lot of like, double speak that was like, talking about this stuff. And now it's just right out there in the open. Even in 2016, we didn't have this level of like, oh, fuck poor people, fuck black people. Like, we don't want them living next to our neighborhoods or whatever. Now they're just blatantly saying it. It's just out in the open. And
be careful
that
what you say,
me.
because that can be taken out of context. I'm just saying.
You mean me? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but like,
nobody clip that.
And like don't clip that, Eric. If you're listening, don't clip that. But like, Innuendo Studios, which is a good leftist YouTube creator, did a video once on the death of the euphemism, and he discusses how like euphemisms, even though they can be harmful, are also still kind of good, because if you don't just come out and say these N-words need to die, it tells you that your society still sees that idea as abhorrent in some regard, right? And when the euphemism dies, when you start talking about, and he brings up the fact of like how we deal with like Mexican immigrants, and like before Trump came into power, there were a lot of euphemisms around Mexican immigration, right? You talked about illegals, you talked about like criminals, you talked about like, and you built this like bubble of words around like what you're actually trying to get to. You can't just say all these, I'm gonna get clipped here, but all these wetbacks need to go back to fucking Mexico. You don't say that because you can't. Society would say that is reprehensible. And now you can kind of say that in a lot of circles. The Republican Party could probably say that, and we would be fine after 2016.
People would cheer, dude.
Yeah.
Seriously, like if Trump said that, they would cheer at his freaking rally.
And what he brings up is that the death of the euphemism means that like now you can go from saying that to actually doing stuff, right? Like if the euphemism dies, you get enough social credit to start doing stuff, to start putting kids in cages, to start deporting people en masse, to start moving ICE into people who've been living here for decades and kicking them out, right? Like you can go in and start doing I'm going to call a pseudo-genocide, because part of the UN definition of a genocide is actually like physical removal of a ethnic people. You don't have to kill them for it to be genocide. It can just be the physical removal of. And when it comes to like poverty and people of color here, what I'm seeing from the RNC, and we can get into this with Trump's speech a little bit later, is a death of a euphemism around urban people, poor people, people of color. If you're within those three demographics, the euphemism just died. They're just saying right out front that they don't like you, that they hate you, and they don't want you next to them. Which before they couldn't say. You couldn't say, I don't want poor people next to me. That was not like on a societal level, that was not deemed as okay to say. And now it's just perfectly fine to say that. And that leads us to some more issues down the road that I'm a little concerned about. Like when the euphemism died for the Mexican and Latino population who were moving up into the United States, you saw kids in cages. That's what happened when the euphemism died for them. What do you think is going to happen when the euphemism dies for homeless people? What do you think is going to happen when the euphemism dies for Black people, for poor people, for people of color? Like, it's not going to be pretty. There's already a pretty bad war against, homeless or houseless people as it stands, right? A lot of cities will kick them out of the area without cause. No problem. They'll go in, they'll destroy all of their products, all of their possessions without a second thought. What happens to them once that euphemism is dead? It's not good.
Yeah, it's
And
not good.
this one, when I saw this interview or when I saw this speech, it clicked for me that this is bad. Not that this is bad, but this is like way worse than I thought it was going to be. So I'm gonna get off my high horse here, and I'm gonna let you speak for a while.
I think you summed it up pretty well, man. Oh my God, Matt Gaetz. I just was watching your stream. Matt Gaetz.
I'm just gonna let you talk, but I'm gonna put Matt Gaetz on in the background mainly because he is a Stepford husband. He looks like a fucking robot. Oh my God, I don't know what's going on with
A
him.
Stepford husband. Yeah.
But he looks like a robot. So you go ahead and
He
talk.
looks like a robot, especially in this speech.
You go ahead and continue your conversation. I'm just gonna let that run in the
I
background.
was just like, he's distracting, dude. Him harping on on Joe Biden's son, and
Yeah.
you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
This guy had some crazy conviction where he got pulled over. So you should look that up. He got into some trouble with drugs. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'll have to check out from
Something
Gates.
of the sort.
Oh yeah, no, I do remember that. Yeah, he did get like a drug bust or whatever. I think he crashed a car while high, if I remember correctly. But I don't remember.
Maybe
I gotta go. Don't quote me on that. I gotta go back.
Seems like the type of dude.
Granted, Hunter Biden
about
is
dude
like the
all you
ultimate
want.
fail son, but like still, like Matt Gaetz isn't going to talk about it. But continue.
Yeah, that was my point. So, I just like overall, I really don't like the kind of message that either party gave across. I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden because I think that's what the country needs. Out of the two options that we have, with that, since we have to, this is the way that our life is. We have these two choices. One of them really sucks, and one of them is an old guy that can't remember stuff all that well. But he'll probably get good people behind him at least. The thing is that Trump's cabinet is just awful.
Actually, Biden's foreign policy cabinet, I'm actually not mad at. Like, it's not what I would personally want, but it's a lot better than I thought it was gonna be. So.
Yeah, and it gives there's some stuff can get done a little bit. It's not going to be the progressive policies that we want, that you and I want, or a lot of people that are progressives like us want. Than if someone like Bernie had got in there, or even Andrew Yang. I don't know if I'm going to get
Yang.
Yeah, Yang Gang, everyone, outed for that. I think that Yang had some really great ideas. I don't really. He's like a analyst on CNN. He's like a contributor on CNN now.
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
he also endorsed Joe Biden pretty friggin' quick.
Oh, did you see
Um,
his did you see
which
his
I was a little
interview
bummed
with
about.
so you know Yang has this thing Yang Speaks on YouTube. He did a
Yeah.
really good I thought he did a really good interview with shit. Give me a second. It was he's an American economist, but he's from Indian descent. Uh,
I would have thought, he had some really great policies. Oh, another person that I really wish would not have been in the RNC was
mhm.
frickin' the UFC owner Dana White. Why the hell was he in there, dude? Throwing his weight.
Publicity.
That's so shitty. That
Publicity.
was so I was so bummed about that, man,
It's just
because
publicity.
you're gonna see a lot of people that are on the fence are gonna vote now for
Oh,
Republican
yeah,
because of
no.
him.
Like a lot of my friends and stuff, like I grew up like doing MMA and fighting and stuff when I was a kid, and like a lot of my friends, like we'd have like house parties around this around, around MMA,
Yeah,
and
people would
like
buy the pay-per-view
yeah,
things.
we
Yeah,
we
I
we
understand.
would
Yeah.
buy like we would have like 5 families buy one pay-per-view and just have like a house party, and it was
Yep.
nice and everything. Like man, a lot of those people I feel like may have been on the fence, but now that Dana White came out, like I don't know, he may have picked a couple of them.
He's another one of those dudes where they were like, "All right, so Dana, we just need you to yell the whole time.
Right.
Okay, can you do that?" And he
Trump
was
is
like,
gonna be the
"Yes, I
best
can."
president who can give us
Sorry.
more money. Money.
And
Um,
and not to talk too much shit about him, but
no,
he
go
has
ahead.
some shitty business practices
Oh
too.
yeah,
Anybody
of course he
watching
does.
should look up like what the shit that he
Oh,
gets away with.
Dana White is an asshole. He's a shitty boss and a horrible person. He's not Ed McMahon bad, but he is pretty bad. But just to go back real sec, the one I was referring to was Anand Giudice was the guy that Andrew Yang interviewed, and it was really good because Anand was able to push back, I think, decently well against Yang's UBI stance, which I've have a lot of issues with Yang's UBI stance, and I think Anand at least he didn't push on him to like make Yang confront some of the issues that I think are there, but you can see like breadcrumbs of the issues
Hmm.
that are there. I think the Anand Diodardis conversation was really good.
I
So
actually don't even think that his UBI, solution was necessarily the best part about his. But he ran on that, but that's not even the best part um, about his all of his policies and stuff, his platforms. I just think that he had a really good, well-rounded approach to a lot of different things. He ended up changing his stance. I was disappointed that he changed his stance on healthcare because he originally was for Medicare for all, and then he kind of changed a little bit. Um, and kind of join more of the Kamala Harris like camp where you're like, oh, Medicare for some.
Medicare for some who maybe want it but don't really need to get it, and then maybe don't have it.
And Pete Buttigieg,
Fucking
Medicare for
Pete.
all that
Fuck you,
that
Pete.
want that really would like to have it, but can't because they're not sure whether they want it or not.
Take your
Like,
McKenzie ass out of here and fucking leave.
that's not what he was always big on telling us what America wants, and he
Right.
really knew as a
Exactly.
Midwestern white dude.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so I was disappointed that he leaned, but I was a really big supporter of Yang early on. Obviously I love Bernie. I voted for Bernie in the primaries. I'll just wear it on my sleeve. Uh, and I was disappointed that Yang did not endorse him. I already said that. I've been disappointed with a few more things that Yang's done, but I still think that he had some good. He actually had a policy about the UFC, and in competitive MMA in general.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
forget exactly what it was, but it's on his website. You could probably still check it out,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine. Um, he had some good ones about like his democracy bucks thing where everybody
Oh,
gets
actually, I actually really
$100.
like that idea. Yeah,
That was a great idea.
the government
Nobody
gives
has
everyone
come up
$100
with
to spend
something.
on their political ideas.
Yeah, for
That's
anybody that doesn't know.
yeah, that's a great idea. Like that is the like if you want to get like money out of like politics, like money in politics isn't the issue. The issue is that the money is so concentrated within a small band of people that that band of people gets to have dictation over the policies that happen, right?
And as a result, like they have a great influence on the quality of our lives, like
Mm-hmm.
in certain ways, in certain aspects. I mean, not in
Oh,
all
in
aspects,
all
but
aspects. Like the pandemic is a great like response to this. Like we can't even get a fucking another extension on unemployment because the lobbyists have
right,
put people in power who don't want that to happen. We can't get
right.
more
That's a
money
good
for
point.
small businesses to stay afloat because fucking Amazon is lobbying people not to keep pushing forward on another PPP. We push forward a policy under the PPP where fucking billionaires can get that money too, right? Like this is entirely
It's
something
insane.
that is under the same like lobbying effort that you're speaking of. This affects our life greatly.
Yeah,
And
that's a really great point, and I think that is it's less obvious when you look at it in terms of like the Koch brothers, like we were talking about a couple weeks ago or last week, was it? The Koch brothers lobbying to prevent, transit from being uh, built, centers from being built because they will make less money from it, right? That's like, I mean, that is literally a direct result, but it's harder for people to see that because it's just like, oh, well, that just didn't happen, you
Mhm.
know? But like when it's like, no, your employment didn't get extended because you had lobbyists. Your unemployment didn't get extended because you had lobbyists fighting for it. That's like something right in front of people's face. I think that they can see a little bit better, and that's something that the democracy bucks might totally fix. If you have enough money to wash out all of that other money, like, I mean, what do they just have to spend more? Or I think that there needs to be some kind of a limit put like we need to repeal the Citizens United
Yeah, but
thing.
Citizens United is only like a small part of it though, because like you can repeal unlimited like donations, but you can't repeal like creating LLCs at infinitum to make those donations. Like
Right.
there's no way of stopping the Citizens United isn't the Citizens United itself isn't the boogeyman that everyone makes it out to be. It's
Right, but it
Citizens
is a
United that
part of
stands
the
in for the
problem.
entire system that's broken. And so Citizens United could get repealed. That would be great. But there's still a billion other ways for them to do this, and it's not hard for them. It
Right,
only
but
makes it
that
like
takes away the
5% more difficult.
unlimited. Isn't that the unlimited contribution?
It is, but again,
A
like it's
part?
unlimited contribution for each entity. You can make 1,000 entities as a company, donate to that entity, and have that entity donate to, this is when like dark money comes in a lot too, like where people would donate to organizations that hide their
Right.
donations and hide their money flows and then donate to whatever causes they want. And so you can't trace it back to them. And that's not part of you Citizens United. That would still exist outside of Citizens United. And so
Right.
Citizens United
And
is
you
a good yeah, go ahead.
you could almost argue that when you force people to make all these LLCs and stuff, like if you take away Citizens United, that eventually it will make it worse if the system continues because then it will be harder to actually determine where money is coming from because people will be
Yeah. I
uh,
mean, either because they can still make these like dark money, like they can still make these like right now they can have these dark money stuff going on anyway. It's yeah.
right.
In either case it's bad. It fucking sucks and it's bad. Okay. All right, Brian, I'm going to give you the last little bit here before we move on. Do you have anything you want to say about the RNC and DC before we
I think
before
we
we
pretty much, I think we've pretty much said it all. You know, I am very much disappointed in you know, and in both of our options. I have been for a while. You know, I a little disillusioned with what's going on in our political process right now in general. I think a lot of people are. I think that's why we got Donald Trump as a president. I think that you know the DNC doesn't seem to have a very good solution to that. The RNC is just kind of trying to ride the wave of what's been working for them. Um, so, you know, I don't see that this really changing unless Donald Trump wins again. It
and
might
even if he
change
wins
if
again, I don't
Donald
think it's
Trump
going to
wins
change
again.
either. I think it's just
Yeah.
getting worse. If you're in a swing state, I'm just going to say this: if you're in a swing state, vote Biden. If you're in a locked in state, do whatever you want. If you're in a swing state, Trump is worse. Trump is just worse. Fascism was worse than liberalism.
A
Biden.
lot of people don't really think about like I hear people talking about like you know kind of like my Republican friends and stuff like they'll say stuff like their taxes were better under Trump.
That's not
And
true.
it's like it can't be true because they don't make enough money, you know, to for that to be true.
Yeah,
You
and they
know,
don't.
and I just
It doesn't
they
matter.
don't really think about it. I don't think that it's an examination a lot of times when people say stuff like that, like of like, was it actually better? Like you just like people just kind of hear shit on the radio and they're like, oh, tax cuts. That means that I pay less taxes.
Yeah.
No, it.
Nope.
Did you check where the income, like which income bracket the
Bracket you're in.
tax cuts were done? You know,
Yep.
so
It's not
and
you.
that and it's like very specific income brackets and a lot of money spent on those, you know, and those people already have a lot of money. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, so I just think that things like that people don't really examine, and you know, people that aren't going to examine, um, you know, if they're not really opposed to Trump at this point, then I don't know if there's going to be anything that really
Nothing's gonna swing them. You just
does
gotta
it, you know.
let them go. Let them
So
fall down whatever QAnon rabbit hole they're gonna fall down
yeah.
and leave them to their fate. All right.
All right.
So that's the end, I think, of our discussion on the politics side of things. I think what we're gonna do now is just take a quick, like, 1 minute break. I'm pretty sure Brian and I probably need to use a restroom, maybe get another drink or whatever, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the death and life of Chadwick Boseman and probably do like a 10 to 15 minute homage to that. So we will be back in 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever. Who cares? You'll be back. All right, welcome back, guys. We are going to move on from the long and arduous, thank you, arduous talk about politics, and move on to much sadder topics: the death of one Black Panther. So we're gonna have a discussion around, or a send up of Chadwick Boseman, who tragically died at the age of 43 due to colon cancer. I felt this was important because I do a lot of work in African cinema, and Black Panther was such a pivotal moment in the global Pan-African culture that I feel it's important to have a discussion around it, and to give Chadwick a decent send up, um, after his death. So before we go into Black Panther and its importance, and its conversation around how Disney was able to co-opt a entire culture for its benefit, I wanted to discuss a little bit more about Chadwick's life, because that's something that most people haven't considered or don't know much about. Most people just know him for Black Panther, but he really was did do a lot of other important things with his life that I think are important to at least remember him for, just as much as his role in Black Panther. So Chadwick was born in South Carolina, and um, he something happened over there.
Nope, we're good.
Okay. And he went to Howard University studying acting and directing. After that, he went to Oxford, and he got into Oxford University and did Oxford's acting and directing curriculum there. And then he came back, and I think one of the interesting things he did was being in that kind of environment. He kind of could have gone anywhere. Howard University is a really good university, and then Oxford obviously is fucking Oxford. But he decided to move to New York, and he finished out his degree at the New York Film Technical School up there. Not NYU, a different school. And then he stayed there, and he worked and he taught acting to kids, both in junior high and high school in Harlem. And he spent a lot of time there working in Harlem and in New York for a while, trying to teach the next generation around acting. And I think that gives a good sense of how he actually did care about the next generation and his place on a lot of the stage. It wasn't just about him getting the Marvel role and being the biggest thing. He actually did care about the Black community and the arts in general. And if you don't know, maybe if we have any international people, Harlem is historically a pretty impoverished Black community. They do have a lot of cultural stuff there, usually around music, not so much around acting and arts. And so him moving in there was a pretty big deal for him to make that decision to move there and work there before he was famous, obviously. Then he got his he did small acting gigs around New York, doing a lot of TV shows. But his first big break was working or acting as Jackie Robinson in 42. And then he got a couple big breaks within the biopic sphere. So he did James Brown in what's the name of the movie? He played he played Jackie Robinson 42, and he played James Brown in Brian, give me a favorite James Brown song. Give me something.
I'm looking it up, the title right now. It's called Get On Up.
Get on up. Fuck
I
yeah,
thought.
get on up.
I had a feeling that was it.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Get up now.
Yeah, get on up.
Get on up. Yeah.
So he played him in Get On Up, and then after that he played Thoreau, in the biopic about the Edward Thoreau from the Supreme Court. And then he got picked up for Black Panther, and we don't have an exact timeline around this because Disney's cagey about their decisions, but it seems to be around 2014, early 2015. He got picked up for Black Panther and then started his role as the titular Black Panther character in Marvel Civil War. And then Civil War came out in 2016. And right around the same time, it appears, now one thing to give note is that Chadwick is very personal. He keeps things close to the chest, and this will be a continuing theme down the road, but it appears that he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer at that time. So it must have been a fucking hell of a year to be diagnosed with colon cancer and also starring in one of the biggest Marvel movies there was. Over the next several years, he continued to battle colon cancer and kept it more or less a secret from most people. Very few people knew that he actually had colon cancer, and from reports I've seen, very few people even in the industry knew that he had cancer. So he was able to continue his pretty seminal work in the Black Panther series and in Black international culture or Pan-African culture, while battling a pretty horrific disease, which I think we need to give him some real credit for. Then he continued his work in the Marvel career. At some point and I'm gonna kind of keep this in chronological order, and I know this one doesn't matter, but it kind of matters. I don't know, it shouldn't matter to me, but it still kind of does. He took a DNA test around 2017, 2018, and it's was found that he was from the Yoruba tribe of Nigeria, and most important to me, because this is where I do most of my international work, was from the Limba tribe of Sierra Leone and the Creole tribe of Sierra Leone, which I find personally interesting because the Creoles are a people who were slaves of the British Empire from all over the British Empire, and after the British Empire freed the slaves, they just shipped them to West Africa, specifically to Sierra Leone. And so the Creole are a ethnic group that is comprised of a Pan-African group that was taken as slaves from all over Africa and moved all over the world, because that's what the British did, and then put back into Africa and were forced to make their own tribe. I find that interesting just because I think it not parallels, but it's an interesting commentary on his own Pan-African and Pan-Black work as Black Panther. And I think, I know it's not important, but to me it was interesting to see that kind of parallel come around, especially because I do all of my work in Sierra Leone. And learning that he's coming from the Limba tribe and the Creole tribe was interesting. Continuing on, he had a girlfriend that he was more or less stable with for a good long time, but they didn't become official until much later, and they were secretly engaged back in 2019, and from reports from their family, they were secretly married in early 2020. which I think makes the whole thing far more tragic because it's clear that his wife must have known that this was coming. Back in 2019, his cancer went to stage 4, which is more or less a death sentence. And I want to go through and just get his wife's name right because I think it's important. Sorry, give me a second. I should have remembered his wife's name. Oh, I also want to bring up his work in the Five Bloods. I think that was also a really well executed role for him, coming after Black Panther, which became a symbol of international Black heroism, and then bringing that into an American oppressive context. I don't know if you've seen the Five Bloods, Brian.
No.
Okay.
I have not.
I think Spike Lee did a really good job with him in that one. I think he played a pretty great role in that. Shit, I can't find his wife's name. I'm sorry. We'll post that later. And then, obviously last week he finally lost his battle with colon cancer, which is pretty tragic. And so, I don't know, Brian, do you have any? I just want to give that as a send up for his entire life, so that people can have a good understanding of where he actually came from and all that. But I don't know if you have any comments before we move on to wrapping up and preparing for next week.
I didn't know most of that. That was very interesting. I didn't know that he was fighting colon cancer even while he was filming Black Panther. And from what I know about, I most definitely am not a doctor, but from what I know about colon cancer is that it is most definitely like one of the most treatable and preventable cancers. But it's just unfortunate that he died of that. Have you heard that before? I've heard that's a lot of people have been. I've heard a lot of people saying that
it's fairly treatable and preventable, but it's also really common. So colon cancer is like one of the most common cancers among men, and when he was diagnosed, it was already stage 3, which is really bad. So in 2016, when we got that news, that was stage 3 is bad. Stage 4 is a death sentence.
Yeah. Well, it's just so sad. And he obviously, he already did him a lot of justice, I think. But he obviously is an icon that cannot be replaced. He will be greatly missed by everyone. It's just tragic that it, and it happens in like the midst of a crisis, and and in the midst of a crisis that is both a political crisis, a racial crisis, a economic crisis. It's a health crisis where we have all of the crises going on right now, and to lose somebody like that is such a cultural icon, and such an icon for potential change and whatnot. It's a bummer. It's very sad.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty big loss, pretty big tragedy. I think, especially within the global Pan-African community, because a lot of my friends in Sierra Leone, they do watch a lot of like Western films and stuff, and it's very rare that they get to see themselves in a lot of that media, and it's very rare that Western people see any people from Africa in their media. It's
Yeah.
African representation is very small. And so I talked with one of my friends on Monday about it, and he said it broke his heart because this was the first time he saw, somebody who he couldn't consider one of himself, and then like a representation of like African culture actually being like glorified on the international community. And that's, it's not gone now, but that part of history and Chadwick's work within that's gone.
Yeah.
And it's it's just sad. So with that, we've decided that next week we are going to go ahead and do a deep dive, much like we did with the cyberpunk thing, into Afrofuturism. So Brian is going to be looking into the origins of Afrofuturism within the music industry. I'll be doing a lot of film and literature stuff within Afrofuturism. So next week is going to be a deep dive on that, and we will explore what African sci-fi and Afrofuturism can really kind of bring to the world. So with that, I think we're gonna go ahead and come to a close. Unless Brian, do you have anything else you want to leave us with final thoughts on?
Check us out next week when we talk about lots of fun stuff. So
Yeah, next week should
we'll
be
be
a
same time.
less shitty show. So
All right.
Okay.
It's been fun. Thanks for popping in, guys, and we will see you next week.